Welcome to Working with Identities, the podcast where meaningful conversations between individuals and companies come to life. Join us as we explore the dynamic relationship between personal identities and companies. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Working with Identities, a podcast where we are dedicated to fostering meaningful conversations between identities and companies. Each episode highlights the experiences, challenges, and talents of individuals from different social and demographic groups. Our goal is to create a constructive space where stories are shared, solutions are explored, and understanding is built, ultimately promoting a more inclusive workplace and society. Today, we are going to be talking about the LGBTQ plus experience in corporate spaces, and I'm very excited to welcome our two guests here today that are going to share from their experience what does it entail to talk about the inclusion of LGBTQ plus individuals in the workplace. So I'm going to pass the microphone first to Susanna so she can present herself. Hi, Susanna, thanks for being here.
Hi, I'm Susanna. My pronouns are she, her, and I work as a developer in a video games company. I don't know if I can say the name of the company or I need to share it or.
Up to you, really.
Yeah, it's a gaming company, and yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Susanna. And also we have Enric. Thank you for being here, Enric, today.
Hi, I'm Enric. I'm a UX UI designer for a mobile games company also. I'm currently in my first job. I started as an intern, and I also volunteer in the DEI team in my company.
Great. Well, thank you again, both of you, for being here today and for us to discuss this very important topic. Specifically, as well, I think like since you both you work in the tech sector, I think like having this focus as well can allow us to dive deeper into what aspects can we can be also specific for that sector. So I think I would like to start with a general question that maybe can highlight the conversation a little bit. And it's an open question, so whoever wants to take it first can go ahead. Which is, what does it mean really when we say that a company is inclusive of the LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah, for me, I think is most of the times inclusivity can be uh, understood as putting a pride flag during the Pride Month in the company's picture on Instagram or on the social media. But I think it's way more about it than just that. Um, uh, what I think is about maintaining an environment where the community, and not just the community, because everyone can feel like they are represented and like cared of. Because
Yeah.
sorry.
No, I was just agreeing.
And
And yeah, I think I agree completely with Susanna. I think it's important to outwardly portray for companies that it's fine to be diverse, that they're all for it, that they're in favor of this kind of thing. But I think the real deal is when you see as an employee that these values are also carried on to you, and like you see that there are efforts to eliminate biases, to work on stuff basically.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah, and sorry.
No, go ahead,
I
Susanna.
wanted to say that for me it's very important that the main heads and the public figures from the companies have a voice, like a public voice about it, like mention it actively during meetings and events, and because there is the way that everyone within the company is going to have that feeling of we need to respect this
Mhm, mhm.
on the
Yeah,
table.
100%. And I think like here there comes like you've touched on it both a little bit, and I think it's very important here to highlight is kind of like what is the difference between doing an act that is just for show and doing an act that truly promotes inclusion. Like how can you really distinguish between just putting a rainbow flag on the logo during Pride Month and calling it a day, and between actually doing efforts for inclusion? What do you think? How can we really like? What concrete actions maybe can come to mind? I think you mentioned the flag. You mentioned that representation and like voicing that leadership be to voice the commitment to these causes. Do other actions you come to mind as well that really mean true inclusion of the community?
Well, on my side, I think there are many examples of things that you can do. Maybe more at the internal level that employees notice and that can be inclusive, right? For example, I was thinking that your policies that you have for internal like offsites or like events in the company, it's very important to maintain a respectful environment, to enforce that. Also, to kind of give value and like give chances to your diverse employees, right? To LGBTQ people, uh, to have roles of decision making, of leadership. So in general, like mm, noticing that there's no bias, or if there's biases, that people are working to get rid of them or like to observe them, right? I don't
Yeah, in a
know.
smaller scale, for example, also comes to my mind like contracts and all kind of documents that are like correctly translated to the pronouns that are inclusive is very important, because I believe that those kind of small details make us feel more at home, more safer.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think like you highlighted something that is very important as well. It's kind of like it's also these small actions, right? Like just when it becomes the habit and it becomes integrated into the company, as you mentioned, like putting the pronouns maybe in your email or in your on Zoom or whatever. Like these very small actions make it the norm that people are sharing their pronouns. So it's not like an interruption that people are doing in order to to say, oh, actually this is the wrong pronoun, I use this other pronoun. It becomes like something that everybody is doing. I think it really also generates maybe a sense of ease around for this aspect, for example, sharing of pronouns and whatnot. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this, but I think like since again you both work in the tech sector, there are a lot of companies, especially like in tech, that employ remote or hybrid work environment. So do you think that inclusion has a specific shape when it comes to these specific environments, since you don't have everybody in person in the office at the end of the day? And like also like think of maybe good or even bad practices that maybe come to mind, like so I think that would help us also elaborate more on what this inclusion really means.
Yeah, I think in my perspective, really the key thing in remote or hybrid work is flexibility, right? Like I think that the best situation is where each person can have their needs met in their own unique way, right? For example, if you're doing hybrid work, it's great to be able to come some days if you need to the office, some days not. For example, I am a person that's more productive in the office, and I appreciate going there, meeting people, all of the stuff, right? And yeah, I think there's dangers in both, right? In fully remote and in fully office, because I don't know, especially with fully remote, I feel like you can be like, it can be very useful for conciliation and for like many things that a person might need to take care of. But in the end, it can also feel like a bit isolating, especially if like you are maybe living alone or far away from the place that you work or something.
For me, is this question is very like important, because I think with this remote aspect of the setting of the work environment, I think here is where we actually can prove that fighting against the cis-het patriarchy and the structures it provides, it's useful not just for the queer community, but also for everyone. Like, for example, in a remote or hybrid environment, people can easily feel isolated. And we are talking about the LGBTQ community, but it's useful for everyone that we create spaces where everyone feels comfortable and included.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I think this brings us to one also like of the questions that I think is very important, which is related to like spaces, right? I think like how can we ensure that these spaces that, for example, we create for different employees, and since we're talking specifically about the community, for the community, which are spaces that are essential for us to actually understand the needs of the community, right? Because like not like people from different, different realities of the community will have different challenges and needs depending on their realities, right? So, how can we make sure that these spaces truly are inclusive of all the different members of the community and really ensure that we're really catering to all of those members? Any ideas?
I think Enrique almost covered this topic when he talked about making everyone feel represented across all the positions, maybe amongst the company. So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree that that's like a very nice starting point. Like, if you come into a company and you see that maybe your boss is someone who understands diversity, or maybe is like an LGBTQ person, or some kind of other minority, that's very reassuring as another minority, right? And I think also, like, if you were talking about spaces, and I was thinking about like safe spaces, I feel like that kind of safe space and like that kind of feeling of being heard comes only from like when the company establishes ways of communication and like of two-way, right? Like, you can the company is willing to do stuff, but the company is also willing to listen to you and like to actually know what do they need to do, because sometimes it can be easily uh, delve into the territory of making actions or doing stuff because the company thinks it's the best thing for everyone, but actually if you listen to the employees, maybe that they don't need that exact thing.
Also, something that comes to me, especially speaking about gaming companies. I think we talked about last day we met. For example, if the video games our companies create represent all kinds of um, ways of expression, gender expression, I think creating characters that are actually real help a lot to make workers feel more included because they are working on something that is real for them.
Yeah, and I also think that it says a lot about a company if they let their employees reflect their own like diversity into what they are making and in creative work, like in gaming. That's very nice, and that makes for also for a fulfilling like work, like work day.
Yeah, definitely. I think like I really like this idea as well. Like also like keeping in mind how in the gaming industry, for example, it has a very creative element, and how like you through allowing more or less people going and representing themselves through that creative aspect that you generate this representation. It's not just about like it's definitely about the representation in the people that are within the company, obviously, but it's also about what the company produces. Are people reflected in what the organization produces or not in that sense? You highlighted a lot, I think, as well, the aspect of communication and creating spaces where people can communicate. And I want to kind of like like go a little bit deeper here, because I feel like a lot of like any company can say, "Oh, you can come to me with a complaint. Oh, you can, this is a safe space. You can tell me anything." But what does it really like? What makes a good communication, a good safe space, and what doesn't, or what is just fake? That to call it in a way or another. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for me is I couldn't mention like specifically what makes me feel safe, but one of the things that I've been thinking about lately, like a lot, it's been like this is always under my perspective as a lesbian woman. I felt many times a lot of pressure to fit into cishet normativities, how I should dress or present myself, that many times I felt I was not professional enough because I didn't look or act like a stereotypical woman in a corporate setting should look like. And I think this is something that the company and the workers working at the company, all of us, can help to create like a safe space where everyone can act or dress or communicate the way they want.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Today I dozed off a bit, but usually I come like in full gish of eyeliner and stuff in my face to the office, and it's very nice to be able to do that like freely and like not worrying about getting any comments or anything. So that's like very important. I also think like as one other area that is like something companies can do is that just when the HR team and the leadership team are in on the like are buying into the idea that you need to make people feel comfortable, you need to give people stuff. When they buy in this like philosophy of diversity and all of this, you can really notice, right? And when they don't, you can also really notice. So I think maybe this is a bit tricky to make into an action, but like the people who are in charge of these things, because they're usually like a couple faces, not many more. So that's really important, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So we touched on another, like I think, another form of expression that is very important, which is like when you enter the office, do you feel that people are trying to fit into a mold, into a specific picture, a specific image, or do you feel people that they are invited to be who they are, right? At the end of the day, and I think like this kind of definitely like while you were talking, I was thinking about it, and then you definitely like you enter any space and you can tell if you would be welcome to really express who you are, really show who you are, or you wouldn't, by seeing how people are led to their will to express their diversity and their identities into that space. So I think this is definitely also important as well. But like if we go back to the remote and hybrid space, because I know like you both have in where you work you have either remote or hybrid format. How do you think this form of expression, or what would be the equivalent of entering the room and seeing people express themselves in a remote work environment?
For me, maybe it's silly, but the profile pictures show a lot. Like if they are very corporative, or you can tell that HR is behind there, like saying, "No, this picture you shouldn't put it," or whatever. Obviously, we all need to keep ethical uh, settings in our profile pictures, but yeah, you can tell if you are allowed to do whatever you please, or you are forced to fit into the norm.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there are little nooks and crannies of like self-expression you can do through Slack, through any like kind of messaging tool that you use, through Zoom backgrounds. I am always amazed at the originality of animated Zoom backgrounds. I have one coworker who is in like a car. Uh, Car washing the stuff, and it's moving all day, and you see him there.
I
So
love it.
yeah, basically I feel like just being able to self-express is really nice. And also in especially in remote, I think it's very important to, if you're doing fully remote or like almost fully remote, it's very important to have like maybe meetings or yeah, meetings that are more casual, that are maybe not so work related, but are just a catch up, like, hey, how are you doing? Because that's what you would usually do organically at the office. But if you cannot do that, then it's very important that you are still pushing yourself to do that, right?
So I don't know if you're noticing, but I'm trying to summarize like kind of like the points that we're making along the way. And I think like we highlighted a lot of things, and I kind of want to see if I am able to do like a quick summary before we move forward. So I think we highlighted a lot the form of expression in various ways, right? Like we said, like being able to express yourself in the workplace, and whether it's in the physical space or whether it's online. We talked about be like having these kind of norms or I want to say traditions or habits within the company that facilitate the sharing of aspects like pronouns, right? Like if everybody's sharing their pronoun, it's not a pause for other people to share their pronouns. We talked about also expression, also like we extended also to when you're creating, for example, characters in games and whatnot. So it's not just within how you're expressing yourself within yourself or the realms of yourself, but also like how what you're producing as a company as well. When you're producing very diverse as well characters in this case and whatnot, you're really showing that you're a company that really lets their its employees express themselves and whatnot. And you finally highlighted as well on the aspect of spaces, right? And spaces in a lot of ways. Spaces in when it comes to communication, spaces where, for example, leadership is creating space or people are creating space in a, virtually, even if it's not in a physical space, to just check up on people, right? To have this more human connection more than this task based relationship where we're just, hey, did you finish this X task that I asked from you? It's more, okay, how are you feeling? How are you doing? And whatnot, and creating this more human connection in the workplace. So I think we have a lot of examples of what true inclusion can be like. I think I want to kind of circle back to kind of like the first question to kind of like finalize with like how would you distinguish between true inclusion and pinkwashing? And can you explain before explaining that what is pinkwashing for you?
For me, pinkwashing was the first we talked about, like just putting the pride flag, and because then you are gonna reach more customers, or I don't know, whatever. That's the main example of pinkwashing, and then don't create like the safe environments for the people are working at your company, because we are talking about company relation with the workers.
Totally. I feel like it has a lot to do with uh, doing stuff for profit or for uh, like with some intention of getting away with X, Y, and Z, or like you think this will be more marketable, or you will attract talent, or you know, versus actually doing stuff because you believe that it's the right thing to do and you believe it will improve the quality of the work that people are doing in your company and the quality of their lives, and you will retain them, but like not just because you don't want to spend money on hiring another person, but because you actually value your talent. I think that's very important.
Some other example of pinkwashing, but facing more the private part, not at the reaching the customers, would be like HR saying that we are a inclusive company, and then never work on creating safe spaces, like safe reporting channels where these kind of issues related to judgment or mistreatment can be addressed. That would be like an example of pinkwashing too.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, like I definitely like see what you're saying. Like how pinkwashing is just like when you want to create a facade, right? Like to create this image, and then there's no substance to actually this image that you're projecting. You just want to look the part, so that because you're extracting benefits from the part in comparison to actually doing those actions. And I think like with everything you said, like it highlights a lot how those actions, they do not need to be very extensive, very like they can be small actions, that a lot of small actions that you're doing, and the accumulation of these actions is what creates this inclusive environment. And what I love about what you mentioned as well, all the points that you've mentioned, and I think Susanna, you mentioned this earlier, is that these actions touch upon also other areas of diversity. It's not just like it benefits a lot of a lot of members of in a company, not just the LGBTQ plus community in that sense. And Nick, you said it very well. Like, in kind of like when you focus on the people that you have and the well-being that they that they experience in the company. And it's not just about, hey, look at me, I'm this amazing inclusive company. It's more about, I really want to be a good place for the people that work with me. So I think like that really is the shift. And I think like this is what highlights a lot the difference between these two. So I have another question for you, which is, how can we make sure then that our inclusion efforts really go and reach everyone in that sense? Because I feel like sometimes a lot of companies, they do some inclusion efforts, they even create these spaces, they even do maybe an employee resource group where they have a group of maybe members that volunteer to be part of that group to discuss elements of inclusion of the LGBTQ plus community. But some companies really struggle with engagement, really struggle with people coming in, sharing their voice and whatnot. And I think like there are two parts of the question. How can we generate more engagement in the beginning? And how can we make those spaces, and for those spaces to actually get translated into actual action, not to make the space for the sake of the space and then doing nothing and saying, oh, we have those spaces, we're an amazing company.
Regarding this, mm, I don't know if this is going to sound very popular, but it's on all of our hands to make these kind of spaces possible. I mean, companies can be struggling, but if people that work there don't really appreciate those efforts, and from the inside of the community don't use them, or don't try to help within them, like you said, Enrique, you were volunteering for your company's ERG, I don't remember what was the name you mentioned, but
Yeah, in our case, it's like the I team, where we do like everything, because we're not such a big company that we have like ERGs for different things. But yeah, basically, it's a kind of an ERG.
so yeah, I was just mentioning that it's in all of our hands to keep those spaces like attractive and useful for all of us. Like if we need something, probably we are gonna meet someone else that really needs that, and being have the courage to say it and to bring up initiatives that could help us. Maybe it can be stressful at first, but then it's going to be very rewarding, both for you and also for the people that are there.
Yes, in my experience, it is a challenge to engage people and to uh, move people to do things outside of like their usual job, right? Because for some people it's like, oh well, I come in, do my thing, go home, and this is a distraction, right? Which is understandable. So I think one part of it is having like, if you create an energy as a company, but then don't give them support, don't give them channels to like diffuse their activities and their stuff. Uh, Basically, if leadership and HR and all of these people don't support the ERG won't have like the power to move people and to engage people. Also, if you feel like it's okay to use that time, like if people can allocate their time, uh, and don't feel like by using their time for ERG stuff, they're losing working time, and they will get scolded for that, or they will need to compensate in some other way. That's also a nice incentive, because usually when people can struggle a bit, they will. So even if they're not that interested, so that's one thing. And another thing that I think is really important is, in the end, listen to your audience, right? Like maybe the I've had the experience where I'm super excited with my team to create something, or to prepare something, but in the end, we're like, well, we really didn't know if this was an actual need, or this was just something that like a small group of people wanted happening. Which also I think there's a space for things that maybe only appeal to 10 people, but if those 10 people have a good time doing that, or like can use that for something, I think that's great. Like, not every event or not every initiative needs to serve the whole company. So yeah, I think it's a bit tricky, but there are ways to make it better. And always, on top of those actions that you need people to engage, you need people to come in to be successful. There are actions that you can do like more in the shadows or like in the background that are also there to improve the experience of your colleagues, right? Like things like moving people to make the equality plan that is required here in Spain, right? Like more administrative things you can also push for.
Definitely. And I really, I think like I loved as well how Susanna, you started with it. And I feel like it kind of like highlighted a lot is the shared responsibility of this, right? Like it's not, I think like sometimes when it comes to diversity and inclusion, I think this is also sometimes why we might find not a lot of engagement in ERGs is that it's seen as, oh, it's an HR thing. It's the, the manager's thing. It's not something that is shared amongst all the members of the company. And I think we need to remind ourselves that the company is a sum of its people, and we need to all be engaged to high, lower or higher level. Some people will be very engaged and dedicating, hours and hours to this, and some people will do small actions, right? Like, but I think like we definitely need to be engaged with these actions and do undo if it's a little bit in order to really create this inclusive environment and not just wait for that environment to be created for us in that sense. So I definitely agree with everything that you both said. So I want to just like before we close to give you a space to maybe share some any thoughts or advice that you might have for people, whether they are from diversity departments or they're generally working in other departments in the company, of how they can actually do their part, right? Like, do you have any piece of advice or thoughts that you would like to share with them?
For me, it's very important to highlight that every step we give into share and be empathic with the rest of the people that surround us is gonna help uh, maintaining and creating a easier environment to live in, and that's something I really really appreciate in all levels.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
For
Mhm.
me, I think my thing that's maybe not the most obvious, but is really useful is intersectionality. Like here, we're talking about in specific LGBTQIA plus matters, but I think most of the times something that will benefit one group will benefit most people. So just listen to your colleagues, make alliances where you can, and find common grounds, and like yeah, I think like people aren't usually just one thing, right? Like people have like a mosaic of stuff in their life. So even if you're super good at LGBTQIA plus policies and all of that stuff, if you have a very bad uh, I don't know, conciliation. I don't know if that's the word, but like if you have very bad hybrid work policies, or like very bad uh, uh, other policies, people will still be uncomfortable, because even the LGBTQIA plus employees, some of them will have trouble with that. So
Definitely, definitely. I think like this is also key. Like also like remembering that people are not just the boxes that we sometimes tend to put them in, and they have like a huge variety of identities, and so like a lot of the identity of people we don't even know, right? Like so we might think, oh, like because like I've spoken to companies before, and they say, I don't think we need to work on this, right? And then we do a session, and then in the middle of the session when somebody feels comfortable they start sharing, and then I don't look at the person that said that, but like in my mind I'm thinking of that person that said, oh, we don't need to work on this, and the realization that there's a lot, like, beneath the surface of what we see, and the importance of working on this and really connecting with people, and like as Susanna said, like with empathy, and really focusing on people, and really crew generating these connections. And it's about, as you both mentioned, like about these small actions that we continually do, and thinking about people as people at the end of the day, as you said, and declare, right? Like with their intersectionality, not just one box. So thank you very, very much for everything that you've shared. It has been such an insightful conversation. I think we touched on very, very important points and key points in how we can generate this inclusive environment for the LGBTQ plus community, but also beyond. And I think this is like this beyond it, I think is also very, very important, because it's not just about the LGBTQ plus community. It kind of benefits everybody in the work environment. So again, thank you very, very, very much for being here today. And yeah, I hope we have more conversations, type of conversation in the future.
I hope so.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.